So I hope that doesn't prevent anyone from turning on their camera if they wanted to or speaking. But we will record for families that couldn't join us tonight. We might have a few more joining in. So we will go ahead and introduce a little bit. Jana Morgan Herman was a staff member at CM since the second year at Community Montessori. Do you want to say anything more about that, Jana?
Let's see. I think it's pretty funny to think about you and me as the lead teachers in the school in a strip mall next to a pizza shop.
Yep.
That was quite a long time ago.
We ate a
And
lot of Domino's pizza.
we ate a lot of Domino's pizza. And I just want to say that I remember that when you told me I was going to be the lead teacher, I was very sad because I wanted to be the assistant and be in practical life because I love it so much. And oh my goodness, how things changed over time.
Yeah. But Jana, I actually hired Jana and she thought she was going to be my co-teacher. And then I went to the older class studio and she was really the lead teacher in early ed. And she brought her two daughters with her. And so she had two daughters. I have two daughters. Both that they, graduated from CM. They were here from the time they were 2.5 and 6, right? Sarah was 6.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about our story, and then we're going to share some things. I thought this was a quote Jana pulled from Dr. Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And I can tell you, I live that every single day. And some of you might also relate to that. Like you're like, oh, I didn't know this thing. Jana's two girls and my two girls became fast friends. I learned a lot from Jana and how she was raising her daughters with their dad, Al. And maybe she learned something from me along the way. I don't know.
Of course,
And,
all the time.
and, one of the things that I think is for both of us as I was just learning Montessori and Jana had been involved in Montessori a few years before me, I was committed to trying to walk the walk, right? Like to really put a conscious hat on to the decisions I made with our children and in starting a new school, trying to find times that we spent time together. And I remember one time this parent saying to me, what do you mean your children aren't in gymnastics and dance and soccer and went on like I was probably was neglecting them by not having them enrolled in all the things, but we believed in doing things as a family every day. But we did things like fondren tennis where you would just try to keep the ball alive, whether it hit the fence or it hit the net. We just worked to keep it alive just for fun. And so Jan and I kind of started that process, with our own children, trying to think about how do we help them with independence and be a part of their world, not as a helicopter-like parent, but just interested.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that I think is really funny about this is that even though my children, at the time when I met Barbara, I'd lived on 60 acres without electricity, with gravity flow water and solar power, all the things. And so I lived a very simple life. I would drive in from Marengo every day with my children and then drive home. And we had a 4.5 inch black and white 12-volt television that I would watch after the children went to bed. And I think at that time, because we didn't have cable, of course, it was just I would watch whatever was on NBC on Thursday nights. That was my TV night. And that was how I engaged with tech at that point. Of course, I had the first cell phone that ever came out, and I remember that Barbara and Glenn made fun of me for having a cell phone, and which was funny. And I think anybody who knows me now would think that it is, or certainly my husband Kyle thinks it's funny that I talk to people about technology, because since I got a cell phone in like 1990, I don't know, 3 or whatever, when I first got one, I have never been without that within arm's reach of myself. Like, it's just crazy. However, I spent a lot of time when I was working on my master's research in 2008 or 9, researching the effects of technology, because we were starting to see phones in school. And so I wanted to know what was happening with that. So for me, that's where this component about technology, that's where that started.
And for clarity, I didn't make fun of you because you had a cell phone. I made fun of you because you only had a cell phone. Because at that time, home phones were used as often, right?
That is so true. That's so true.
And, when Jana and our kids were young, we had dial-up internet, and they didn't have access to a computer in their hand at all times.
That's right.
And so, we did things like try to keep the house computer in a common space. And, we had luxuries of the time and technology that most of us in the call don't have anymore, right? Like there are maybe a dozen or 24 computers in each one of your houses, and which also impedes with that gift of time, right? Because some of us feel like we're negotiating or balancing or trying to set new parameters or household rules or whatever we're doing to try to limit some of the technology use so we can be with each other. And so Janet's going to talk some about that and how that, how we can use the technology of the day to embrace each other, and when it impedes us, what can we do?
Awesome. Now, I don't have control of
you
this.
Just tell me when and I'll move it.
So this is kind of funny. I think when I showed this a few years ago, when I present on this all the time, and when I showed this a few years ago, someone raised their hand and they said, actually, my child converted a pizza box into a computer, and and my son went out and would bring boxes to the doors, and they played Amazon delivery guy. And I was like, that is so apropos. That is exactly what today's children would do, right? It makes total sense to me. And so I feel like most of us can relate to this in some way. Or when you see children, I don't think you can see me right now, but when children walk around with some little rectangle up to their ear talking on the phone, that's just very common because tech is a part of their lives. Okay, let's see what's next. All right, so throughout this, I want you to think about adding in instead of deleting. One of the things that I will echo that Barbara talked about was growing and going. You're just going to do the best you can until you know better. When you know better, do better. And remember that there are many different kinds of ways to make changes. And no matter what, if you decide that there is something that you wanted to do differently, that the you in the past did the best that you in the past could. And that if you decide you want to make changes, you can do that. You can make changes about things every day of your life until you die. You never have to do one thing. You can always decide to do something different, or you can decide after you hear things to keep things the same. That part's up to you. Whenever we are talking about this information, though, I always want to remind people to think of it as adding things in instead of deleting things. We want to think of ways that we can create opportunities for connection. And that is what research emphasizes doing, and that you want to prioritize as much as you can. Here's your summary. Here's like your too long didn't read summary. That you prioritize your time together, the importance of eating together, getting enough sleep, and outdoor experiences. We are all just really fancy houseplants, and that's how we need to care for ourselves. The most important thing that we need to do too is to set an example. And if you are a person who is constantly working or scrolling on your phone, like I am, then remember that your example is more important than whatever lesson you are telling to children with your words. And that giving the gift of your presence, you want to give them experiences and not things. You will never regret spending more time with your children. Okay, so there's a lot of information. I may say things, I probably will say things that are going to upset you in some way or like activate you. You might have feelings about them. I want you to know where I get my sources from. I do not cherry pick research. So what I look at the people who have devoted their lives to this research, and they are the brightest people in the world on this topic. It's the American Academy of Pediatrics, the World World Health Organization, the CDC, the National Institute of Health, and other systematic reviews or meta-analysis that triangulate data. So you can't cherry pick a study that comes out. Whenever a study comes out, don't pay any attention to that. You want to look at what the largest groups of reviews show about things. And that's why we look at the scientists from the American Academy of Pediatrics, the World Health Organization, the CDC, and the National Institute of Health. And then remember that you have to revisit those guidelines every year or two for the most up-to-date and relevant information. I will tell you that since I've been talking about this in 2008, it is pretty consistent across the board. They've not gone back and said, oh yeah, spend more time. It's not great for kids to spend more time with technology. So we'll keep that in mind. So when we think about screens, one of the things that is important to know is that even, I would say, even up to 10 years ago, children were spending 53 hours a week on technology. And that we have all kinds of research now that reinforces this idea that more is not better, and that there's no substitute for human interactions. And at every level, the more time for each hour that children spend engaged in technology, they are more likely to have learning difficulties or behavioral struggles or stress, depression, any number of things. And all of that is something that you can address slowly. When you hear information or you go and read this information on your own, I would suggest not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Technology can be really helpful, and it can provide a means of connection. I mean, my goodness, I'm so glad that we had Zoom and Google Meets during the height of COVID, when that was the way that we could see each other. And still, there are many differently abled people and different kinds of bodies that depend on an interaction with technology. So just want to think about how we can use it as a tool instead of entertainment more often than not. Parents, here's where it comes down to you. You can have all of these feelings. We can have all of these ideas about how we would like children to spend time and what children's time could be devoted to, but your own TV viewing, your own computer usage, your own scrolling of your phone is the biggest lesson that you're going to give. And that when researchers study adults who are engaged in their phones or over engaged in their computers or interacting with whatever's on the TV, video games, or whatever's on there, that what we see is that children's behavior, they are seeking to connect with you. And so oftentimes their behavior will escalate into the point that they can require your attention. So your media habits are going to be the strongest predictor of children's media habits, period, at any age.
I had my grandkids over last weekend, and one of them said something that made me think, oh, that would be a great thing to give them as a gift. And so I went to look for it. And within 30 seconds, my granddaughter said, are you going to stop playing with us now and be on your phone?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh,
yeah.
like she, and maybe she won't say that forever, but it was eye opening,
Mm-hmm. I don't even, it's such a part of our work lives, especially that we don't even think about it, and for especially people who are maybe 45 or 50, we just do not know the world in which children live. Like, that was not our world. There was a time you had to consciously be on technology if you're 45 or above, and it is a different world for children. So while it may be seamless, though it may seem like it is a part of their existence and it wouldn't bother them, they are still human, and our brains have not evolved not to need direct interaction with human beings. So remember that the parent-child interactions that you have are going to be so important, and that you can take advantage of just daily routines to have emotional connections with children, and that any of those routines that you establish where you are directly interacting with your child show to be protective of children and provide for healthier outcomes. This includes things like obesity, asthma, risky behavior. All of those kinds of things can be the chances of them facing fewer struggles are increased, or I guess the chances are decreased when you are interacting with them on a more constant, purposeful, and regular basis. And by the way, at the end of the slides, I may say, we don't have time for me to do this presentation that it normally takes a really long time. And so at the end of the slides, I have all of the resources that you can go in and find all the receipts for everything I'm saying, because I love receipts. So our concern or our awareness needs to start from the time that there are infants and toddlers in our homes. And that what happens is, when we are engaged in media, or when children are engaged in media, they are doing less time engaged in two very essential activities for healthy development. And that is creative play and interactions with adults. Children learn how to be human from other adults. And so the way that they see us or don't see us interacting is a lesson for them. We know now that even media tools that are designed for learning can have detrimental effects on speech and language, and are not a substitute for hearing about things from parents or caregivers. So you are better than a leapfrog or whatever the current toy, electronic
Powerful.
learning
Yeah.
toy is for today.
Yeah.
And by the time children turn 10, every additional hour of television that they watch as a toddler is associated with lower math and school achievement scores, reduced physical activity, and just a whole host of struggles that children can face. And I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this because
Empower.
because nobody tells you. How would you know if things are designed for children? If programs are designed for children, how in the world would you know that they're not helpful and that they can place barriers in the child's way? This is especially, you've heard probably people say that teenagers are like toddlers, and they are in the sense of the blooming and pruning that goes along with their brains. And between 11 and 13, there is this second, what we call blooming and pruning of the brain. And whatever you've probably, or you may have, especially if you're in the military, you may have heard this idea of what wires together fires together. So that their brains are actually forming and making neural connections based on what they quote unquote practice, or what they experience over and over. And so on the converse side of that, what they are not doing is pruned away. So this period of time between 11 and 13 is this great second chance to be able to help children round out their experiences in the real world, doing real things with real people, learning about their family and their family's beliefs and values, and how to frankly just be a good person, be a good human. They learn that from the people that are the most important to them in the whole wide world, and that is their parents, or those are their parents. In Education for Peace, Montessori said, the individual rarely lives a life entirely apart from others. Rather, he is meant to associate with many others. All children, Montessori says, we want them to be people of their time and place. And so, yes, of course, technology is a part of their time and place, but as a tool. And so the associations that we have with people are the things that make us human. And we know that living apart from people does not allow them the opportunities to develop a whole wide range of experiences, understanding the differences between and among all different kinds of people and situations. And so trying to provide that for them is going to be helpful. American Academy of Pediatrics has a lot of information on technology and play and reading and sleeping and all the other things that I'm talking about. And you can go and find more on from the references on the website of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Technology is an important part of our lives and has made living a full life possible for people who are not able to, or who have limitations or barriers in place for whatever reason. And we want children and teens to have interactions with the computer. So I'm not saying burn your computer or destroy things. You don't have to, I'm not saying that. We are just going to be really conscious about the ways in which and the times that computers and technology are used. And it is still really important. And this is the American Academy of Pediatrics. I'm not trying to be the popo. I'm not trying to be a poopy pants or like rain on your parade or make things not fun. But the most important thing is if they are doing it, that you are present, that adults are present, and that you're having conversations about it. So if you go to the American Academy of Pediatrics webpage, they have a family media plan, and this can help you establish.
And it's in our family handbook.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That you can establish kind of guidelines that work for your family to make steps that would, and that, you know, for deciding what kind of media you're going to consume, when you're going to consume it, how often you're going to consume it, with whom you're going to consume it, and how you can think about other, let's see, activities or experiences that you can add in.
So not top down. Parents decide. It's a family meeting. It's a family plan.
Yeah. And just know that, you know, dopamine is a thing, and that people who design apps and games are not dumb. And those games are designed to stimulate the release of dopamine and have you want to use it and want to use the app or the technology. So just, you know, it is not going to be a surprise to you that you might have some pushback or people who are really unhappy. However, as with any habit that has, or behavior that someone has adapted to or incorporated, if they are going to make changes, there might be some resistance about that. But when it comes down to it, you are the parent. You are responsible for their health and well-being, and sometimes, you know, being you're not their friend. You're not there to be their friend. You're there to keep them safe, loved, and provide for their needs. And if it is something that you evaluate and you see, oh, we need to kind of put some parameters or revisit this, then inviting them to be a part of that will help them be more successful. It might not be a choice that they don't change anything, but it can be a choice about what steps they can that you can all take toward on that path. For children under 2, there's just really no great media use. End of sentence. I mean, you can go and read all about it, but there is just nothing. There is just 0 ways that media use is healthy for children under 2 years old. And I'll leave that at that. Okay, so one of the things that the American Academy of Pediatrics suggests is that if you are a doctor, this would be, or a pediatric provider, that it would be helpful for you to share with parents that the duration and content of their media, but also is important on understanding what kind of impact that have, but then also to help families create unplugged spaces and times in their home. Because devices can be anywhere. And if your child has a phone or a tablet or the internet in their room, they have access to every single thing on the internet, period. And if you think that you have filters, I would say, you should spend some more time around teens. There are no filters. I mean, like, it is just almost impossible to create filters that these brilliant teens cannot navigate around. You want to be able to think about ways that you can use technology and creatively, or to solve social problems. That's awesome. And then this is really important. Parents need, for yourself, not just teens, adults are terrible at this too. I am terrible at this too. I am saying that. I'm throwing myself under the bus. I too am terrible. The importance of not displacing sleep, exercise, play, reading aloud, and social interactions. That is the most important thing, is that when we don't protect sleep, that has direct consequences with the brain. Exercise, play, reading aloud, social interaction, all these things are, I mean, I'm not trying to be scary, but harmful. They are harmful to children. And protecting sleeping spaces is so important. Okay, so if you are a family who like always has the TV on, that's cool. But let's just think about maybe finding great content or making sure that you're having conversations about what is on so that children can look at things critically. If you have young children and you're just like, look, I don't know if I can live my life if my children don't watch a couple of hours of TV every night. I hear you. There are great options for you as when you choose high quality programs. In fact, there's a lot of research on Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, which are available on Amazon Prime, by the way. And that shows like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, those are the two that have been studied, that they can improve cognitive, linguistic, and social outcomes for children age 3 to 5. The other thing is documentaries about animals or things where people are speaking slowly and in real life about factual things. So if you are a family that constantly has it on, just think about what you're putting on. Are they real people doing real things and having real conversations at human speed? That's great. I know I can feel people like getting upset at this point, but I can't help it. This is the facts are facts. So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends keeping media, so internets and TVs and phones at night, good luck, out of the bedroom, and turning phones or TVs off during meals, and then maintaining ongoing dialogue about that. When, again, because, well, number one, sleep in the bedroom. Number two, everything's available if you have it on computer. And I know after having worked with teens and had teens that they are so good at maneuvering in and out of different screens when people are coming in. But keeping computers or that kind of technology out of the bedroom and then making sure that you can protect sleep. Again, I just can't say that enough. Is a big thing. So let's see here. One of the best things that you can implement is eating together. And you may say, yeah, I don't cook. I'm like, I hear you. Me neither. I don't like cooking either. You can have this opportunity even if you get takeout food, if you go out to eat, that one of the biggest things that you can do that would benefit children is eating meals together. And if you're a second or third shift worker, you can have these kinds of wonderful outcomes with breakfast or a late lunch or whatever, because it's not really about the food, it's about the protected time to have conversation. And when you consider, this is one of the best ways to boost academic achievement, even when all other variables are considered. So no matter what your socioeconomic group is, no matter what your race is, your education level of the parents, when all of those things are taken into account, family meal times and discussions provide optimal outcomes. Again, this can be any meal. When you eat with your family, you're more likely to eat nutritiously, you're likely to be less stressed. Children are more likely to have a larger vocabulary. They're better listeners because you are modeling. So if you're sitting with people, you're sitting with your child and you're like, oh, you know, it seems like something's up. What's going on with you today? And the person's like, nothing, I had a terrible day. You have this conversation. You are modeling for the child and for any other children who are there what it's like to be a good listener, what it means, what it looks like to be supportive, how it can help to talk to people about how to solve problems. And even teens feel like their parents know them better when they eat with them, and they are less likely to smoke, abuse drugs, or alcohol. If they just eat with, it's like it requires nothing. And even if teens complain about it, that's the one thing that is important to know too. So even when teens complain about this, they report that they are closer to their family. They report that their families care about them, and they have a better social network and better outcomes for depression and stress. And remember that play is the work of the child. This is something that Montessori said, but as it turns out, and you can switch it, the American Academy of Pediatrics acknowledges that play is essential to development because of all the benefits of cognitive, physical, social, and emotional well-being that children gain from having free play. And this is even more important. You can turn this. This is even more important when we consider that free play is has better outcomes for children than extracurricular activities. Not to mention, if you are the person who gets to drive children around all the time for extracurricular activities, you're happier too. So many times parents pick up from school and they're running from one thing to another, and children are eating in the car, parents are eating in the car, they are not having this opportunity to connect, when really all long-term studies show that just spending time with each other, eating and playing, is a great way to have an amazing outcome for your child, the best outcome for your child. And there are only like 3 people in, each state they're going to get a full college ride to. I'm not saying 3, but it's not likely that the
1%.
extracurriculars, yeah, 1%, thank you, are going to, it's just, is it worth the payoff for losing this time, unless your child is absolutely passionate about doing this activity.
We have this natural playground that you can come to too. So if you
That's
don't know
right.
where to play, come here.
That's right. And there are people whose neighborhoods are not really safe for them to go home and play. And the community does a great job of trying to make sure that that's protected, and as much of that as possible can happen at school, and that everybody gets outside a little bit. But the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 90 to 120 minutes per day of outdoor unstructured playtime. We know that children are not staying until 5:30 and then going and doing that. Y'all are tired. Y'all are tired. But we want to keep in mind just how important it is. And then the other thing you can do that's really easy and free is to spend more time reading to your child from the time that they are an infant. This has, of course, a boost of vocabulary or reading skills, but it also fosters a sense of connection. You want children to associate reading with love. And when the person that they love most in the world is reading to them every night, that fosters a sense of connection and love, no matter what the day has looked like. Okay, let's skip this. And then sleep. Sleep. I want y'all to look at this. So infants 4 to 12 months need 12 to 16 hours per 24-hour cycle. Children should up to 2, 11 to 14 hours, 3 to 5, 10 to 13 hours. Children 6 to 12, 9 to 12 hours. Teenagers 13 to 18, 8 to 10 hours. And then adults need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And we are not getting this. And remember that even though you pick your child up at 5:30 or whatever that is, the time that you do spend with them, if you are not running around from extracurricular to extracurricular, you are engaged with them. You can live your life a little more slowly. And then if children go to bed at 8 or 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock for the younger ones, guess what? You have a number of hours between your 7 or 8 hours and their 10 to 13 hours where you get adult time. And that might be a time that you want to scroll on your phone, right? So in conclusion, remember that tech is not good, tech is not bad, tech is just powerful. And that's something that Sherry Turkle said. And I think it's a true statement, and it's something for us to always think about. Of course, there's no evil there. It's just how we are using it. We don't want to take the place of sleep, play, being together. And we want to think of it as a tool, not a toy. We want to start slow and build a plan through baby steps. It can be tricky and hard to navigate, and we would be more than happy to help you. I'm volunteering Barbara because she's on site. And then again, don't think of it as something that you're taking away, but think of it as an opportunity to add more experiences and moments of connected in, because you are the role model. And play is good, reading together is good, eating together is good, sleep is so important, and will give you that adult time that you need to, and that you can do it, because at the end of your life, you will not regret spending more time with the people that you love.
So important. So now we have a gift for you. The early ed staff, the 6 to 9 staff, the 9 to 12 staff, 12 to 14 staff, 14 to 18 staff, put together what their top 10 or so items are that you can do to give that gift of time to your child. So this starts the part 1 of the 3 to 6 year olds, and explore the natural world. Jana talked about that most certainly really listening to their thoughts and beliefs, helping them to notice the tiny details outside, tell true stories together. There's a natural development that happens between 6 to 9, where children learn to lie. And so when you tell true stories together, it helps to add that part of that, create stories that can be true. It doesn't have to always be something that happened, something that could have happened. Sharing your own true stories, also really important. The reading together every day. So we talk about, as children are learning to read, there's different ways we can read, letting them read. So if there was a book that you read every night and now they read it to you, doesn't have to mean they know every word. They can just tell the story. That's really fun. Choral reading, where you all read the words at the same time. And so you can kind of pause and see how they're remembering words and phrases. Identify, embrace, and use accurate terminology with your child. So we're taking grandma to the cardiologist instead of just the doctor. These are just easy ways. Let's go look at the Japanese maple and see how it's doing, the one that we grew last spring. So helping them to have really accurate terminology. Practicing emotional regulation. Allow your child to work through difficult situations by letting them know that you believe in them, allowing them time to struggle and shift. Hard to do when you're getting out of the door in the morning, but maybe in the afternoon when they're starting to get tired, or in the evening, you take that time and sit with them. And instead of setting strong, strict boundaries, especially for a developmental emotional component, and helping them to work through that part. So talk to them about how you work through. Sing, make up songs, develop a list of favorite songs. 2-year-olds and up, all children love singing, honestly. Just make up songs with them, explore different artists. Glenn used to play Irish music when our grand twins were little, and he turned it back on the other day, and our 2-year-old, our third grandchild, started dancing like a jig. I didn't even know she could do that, but it was exploring something new. Build with them, build forts out of pillows and blankets and branches, explore magnet tiles, Lego free play, clay, Play-Doh, etc. Those are things. Draw lines, squiggly marks, circles, shapes. Don't worry about helping your child every day that maybe isn't ready yet to draw letters. Drawing those other things, super important. Help them to position their hand on the writing utensil. Our 2-year-old grandchild, every time I give her a pen, I help her to hold it, to pinch and add the shelf. And so there's a little video that you'll get this when we share this out tomorrow. And if they do that at a very young age, once their fine motor skills are developed, and then they pinch and add the shelf each time they pick it up, then you don't have to try to retrain them later if they're holding the pen like this, so it's really important. And then reduce screen time, some of the things that we've already talked about. So 6 to 9, again, that outside time is important. Also telling true stories. Read together. When ready, help them read developmental books. So I've linked there some of the Bob books. Some of you know about those that are just phonetic and consistent. Participate in real life math practice every day. Plan family meals with a budget. Eating out or eating in. Help gather tax return information. Determine sales tax. Determine the gas expense on a trip. So, those are really important things. They want to go to Holiday World, and you say, we'll need gas money, and we haven't really saved for that. Well, how much does gas cost? What would it do? And doing those real life math problems together, even if they're not doing that whole problem by themselves. Also label. Let your child put Post-it notes on the house. That 6 to 9-year-old. This is a noun, a fork. And so, you might be writing it at first. They might be writing it when they're ready. It also gives you some links there to print in cursive so that they can practice whichever they're practicing right now. Again, practicing the emotional regulation, model how they can ask for space, offer a hug, make and act out skits. 6 to 9-year-olds love skits. They love them. Model acting out a common book or nursery rhyme that they know. Lead by curiosity. When your child is curious, help them to learn about anything they can think of and are interested in learning more about. So whatever, the sky is the limit. If they have a question, let's talk about it. Let's learn more about it. Write, and again, just writing all kinds of things, helping them to position their hand again. Listening, really taking time to really listen to their thoughts, their reasons, their beliefs, their worries, their feelings, rationales, like, so why did you take my wallet? Instead of like, you took my wallet. Why did you take my wallet? Well, I wanted to buy you a gift. I'm like, oh. So let's talk about what you can do since you don't have money. Let's talk about that. Again, the reducing screen time, some options there on cooking that you can do with your child. So many skills to learn from that. Eating as a family, also super important. So 9 to 12-year-olds, we added in engage in the world. My two daughters got an ID, so you can go to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. Instead of getting a driver's license, they just get an ID, which is super cool. And so they go through that whole process. They look up, we research, what do they need? Once you have an ID, actually for our daughters, they both had credit cards since the time they were 9 or 10. So they helped to pay for some things. Actually, when they went to the doctor's office, they filled everything in. In this age of 9 to 12, they use their own credit card to pay their copay. So, as much as they can. I was at the BMV because I didn't know my driver's license expired this 6 months ago. And I was behind this woman with her child who was getting ready to, 16-year-old, I assume, getting ready to get his driver's license. She was holding all the papers. She checked him in. She did the talking. So as a Montessori parent, you would switch that, right? You would have them do those pieces. Like, you would stand beside them and help them to do that by themselves. Reading, obviously, giving them a budget to purchase books. Library outings, fantastic. That participating in real life math is also really important. Can you imagine if you were putting together your tax return and they were helping you to do those pieces? They get to understand how that works. Did you pay enough income tax? Did you pay too much? We have a little windfall at the end. Emotional regulation, also still important. The skits, something really fun for them to do, and that lead by curiosity. Write, so now they're using their letters and words that they've learned how to write for purpose. Maybe they're going to write to a legislator or write a journal or send a postcard to family and friends. Take their passions in their community and make actions for good. Write a letter to the editor, write a donation letter for the food bank or the community pantry. Listening, have family meetings. We didn't do them often, but when we had a family meeting, we discussed what we all agreed to and what we each committed to. And then we wrote it down and we put it somewhere in a common space so that we could all help each other hold accountable to that. Reducing the screen time, or thinking about screen time, cooking, eating as a family, playing card games, board games. They learn strategy and taking turns. For that 12 to 14-year-old, again, helping them to get that ID. They do their own grocery shopping. For our daughters, they had a budget of food for their lunch, and so they could not have a Lunchable every day, but we made a plan like every other week or once a week, and they could budget that into their groceries. And then they would have, sometimes on Friday, they would just have the food left that was potatoes and maybe green beans because they didn't eat, all of the 2 vegetables a day like they had planned. Read, helping them to create a slam poetry night at home or with friends, and etc. Really encouraging a family read aloud, even as a young teen. Participate in that real life math. Help, again, having them think about what role they play in the math part of, salaries and understanding what happens with a paycheck, what money comes out of that. Emotional regulation. Again, this becomes super important as the development of a 12 to 14-year-old. The teens, remember, coined that age level as natural disasters because they know that their emotions kind of went up and down. And so demystify what that means. Remind them that you value mental health as much as you do physical health. Giving them a space to think through whatever's happening for them. Make and act out skits. And one of the developmental components of a 12 to 14-year-old is to put on different hats. And so how fun, to have an overnight where they actually create something, a skit, that lead by curiosity, if they're interested in climate change or water purification, homelessness, how to care for a car, the tire pressure, gas, etc. Those writing for purpose things, that writing to the letter to the editor, something they're passionate about. Take time to really listen, about what they're thinking about, the roles and responsibilities of each household member. And, I think this one's important as you get into teens. Try mentoring instead of monitoring their screen usage. It's a really powerful strategy, I think, as well. And as they get to that end of their time here at Community Montessori, that older teen, again, time for outside, ride bikes, yard games, bonfire, garden prep. Again, helping them with that engaging in the world, sign in for appointments, fill out paperwork, reading, research college options, read about different job openings, participate in that real life math, like how they will budget for college or apartment, save money for a car. Again, that emotional dysregulation. How do we help them to regulate their emotions in positive ways? How to get their driver's license, being curious about that. How to care for their own car, career options. The writing, write a donation letter, we talked about. Listening, reducing the screen time, mentoring over monitoring, and then playing those games and music, create family playlist, prepare a meal or just a snack, preparing, eating together, making that a ritual in your family. So we hope that those are really powerful ways that, and we'd love to hear from some of you. If you have some ways that you give your child or children the gift of time, but we find it super important to think about each child through their own lens of stage of development and how we can help them to be active, independent members of the community. And I'm sure I could have done more or different, but I remember one year asking the board, I wanted an increase in my pay because we ate out almost every single night, because that's how we found our time to spend with our family, because we worked 14 hours a day and we wanted to make sure that we had that time. And so we invested a lot of our salary in eating out. And so each family has to find what works for them and create the plan that helps them to connect with their young person. Because as Jenna shared, it's not something we, as our children are grown, and we have grandchildren now, I never say, oh, I spent way too much time with Casey when she was 13. Why did I waste so much time with her, right? I really think about, and really value and see that now with my own grandchildren.
Yeah, I would just say too, I want to emphasize just the importance of doing things that are not stressful. So all of when you were talking about earlier, you were talking about, like the letter writing and things like that. This should not be an assignment, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to give assignments. That's the goal is for you to do things together that are purposeful and meaningful for your family. So if you're having a conversation at dinner and something comes up and you decide you want to write your representative, you all do that. Talk about that together. That is something that can be beneficial, but really, it's just a time to connect. You want to associate all of these memories with love. When you have, when your children hear you say, I love you all the time, when they see that you are, that you, even if they resist as teenagers receiving that information from you, they know it in their hearts when you are practicing it continuously. And so in order for them to hear things when things are tough, there really has to be kind of like this deposit that's already been made about the things that where you are celebrating the things that you love about your child and creating memories where you are laughing with your child to kind of balance those out. So often there were a few studies that were done on how many times a day adults speak to children, and it's almost nothing if you are, it's
Mhm.
almost like it's like 10 words or something if it's not a command of some kind.
Mm.
So really creating those opportunities, like you said, for storytelling around a campfire, or for me personally, I know it's just much easier for me to step away if I turn off my cell phone, if we actually go camping or actually go sit in the yard where I am not physically near those things. That's easiest for me. But I think starting small with just playing board games, playing different kinds of games, and it's not like you don't have to play cooperative games all the time, because playing a cooperative game shows somebody how to be a good loser and a graceful winner. Both of those things are equally important. In addition to finding whatever works for your family. Of course, like the Roseberries, they were really into theater, and so for their family, theater is a big part of their lives. I am not like that. That is not my area. But there are things that my family does that other people don't do. So it's definitely not one size fits all. It's all just about creating community and moments where you are building that bank of connection so that when things are tough and you have to have hard conversations, that can be received more easily.
Glenn and I have the grandchildren over every weekend, at least for one night. And on Sunday morning, two of them woke up at 5 a.m.
Mm.
And so sometimes it's 5:30, sometimes it's 6 because they go to bed at 7. And so I thought, oh, I could encourage them to go back to sleep, but they were in there and laughing and giggling, and one had to go to the restroom. And so we just went on out and started the day together and took care of the dogs. And one of the games that we play almost every morning on their own accord, they'll say, Oma, I'm Oma, can we play with the flashlights? And they've created all these different games that we turn the lights off in the family room that we play with the flashlights. It's not me leading, it's them leading. And I'm just listening. And oftentimes it's there's a mama flashlight, and then there's the babies that are inside the mama's tummy. And they've got this whole world happening. How do you get out of the tummy? How do you get back in the tummy? And so they just had a new sibling born a few months ago. So, what a way to think about, the world is not, gosh, you got to go back to sleep. It's just 5, but taking advantage of it, when it happens and
Mm-hmm.
having those moments.
I love that. Does anybody have any questions, or do you want to ask anything that's a follow-up, or would you like, if there are any resources that you think I might be able to point you to, I'll be happy to do that.
Or sharing what works for you and your family.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Hey, hey.
Jesse.
Yeah, one of the things that I've found that I've kind of practiced, I was just counting back in my head how long I've cognitively done this, and it's about 5 years, about as long as Penny's been going to CM. And, we talk about how you are in every way the role model for your kids. And sometimes you are not guaranteed to be the best role model in every situation. So one of the things I think that's really important is to vocalize when you recognize that you're not handling a situation well, or when you are frustrated with something, or vocalize and apologize when you're wrong, or when you handle the situation with your child
That's
in
right.
not the best way. Just
So
letting
right.
them know, like, hey, your parents are human too, and we are very capable of mistakes. And I've found that over the years, as I've let Penny know, like, yeah, I'm struggling today, or I'm not handling this situation well, or I got too frustrated, or I shouldn't have yelled or spoke the way I did to that guy who cut us off, or anything like that, it's allowed her to kind of develop a sense of when she's not handling something well, and then can vocalize it with me. And also, she can read me like a book at this point. She can say, I can tell you're struggling. And it's really like, it'll make me tear up. Like, if I'm having a rough day, she will just help. Like, she will just, she'll start doing the dishes out of nowhere. Like, she will just do something to take something off of my plate, So it's just important to
vulnerability.
to show your vulnerability to your kid. And then that also helps you understand that, you're not 100% of the time going to be the perfect role model. Part of that is just acknowledging and helping them understand your own natural failings as a human. And I've just now, while we were doing this, come to realize that the length of time that I've been doing that has coincided with from when we enrolled her at this school, and I kind of started getting more resources on being a parent. So, thanks. I'm glad to have had that. And
That's cool. Thanks, Jesse.
I recommend that everybody, is very honest and just open with
and humble. I think that's it, right? So many times if people, children might not be able to articulate what is up with the thing, but they know, they can recognize pride, even if they can't call it out. And if we want children who will apologize, then we have to be people who model apologies. And just saying, I didn't handle that. Even if it's like the next day, I was thinking about that yesterday, and I wish I'd handled that differently. And children are so forgiving. Children love you no matter what, And so just helping them with that, I think, is so helpful. So that's great that that's working so well for you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah.
Thanks, Heather. Okay.
Thanks for jumping on the call and being here for us. And thanks for all of you that are out in the world that will watch this with us. And please feel free to reach out if you have any other thoughts or comments or things we can add to those sheets that the staff started. So thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.